I work reception at a Sydney hostel where backpackers crash between beach trips. An American woman checked in, glanced at her room assignment, and asked if we had nicer rooms for Americans. I told her all rooms were identical. She leaned closer and whispered, "But like cleaner ones?" I explained we clean every room the same way. She nodded slowly, then asked, "So you're saying you don't have premium rooms?" I said no. She looked genuinely confused and said, "Then how do you make money?" I told her people paid the advertised rate. She stared at me for 10 seconds, then said, "That's socialist." A bloke from Boston asked our cafe if we could make his flat white less Australian. When I asked what that meant, he said, just regular coffee. Not weird. I explained a flat white was espresso with steamed milk. He said, "Right, but can you make it normal?" I asked if he wanted a latte instead. He said no, he wanted a flat white, just American style. I made him a regular flat white. He took one sip, nodded approvingly, and said, "See? Way better when it's not trying so hard to be foreign. Australians don't sugarcoat. We're direct, sarcastic, and allergic to fake enthusiasm. Americans expect customer service smiles and the customer is always right worship. When they hit our brutal honesty wall, confusion turns to comedy." A bloke from Boston asked our cafe if we could make his flat white less Australian. When I asked what that meant, he said, just regular coffee. Not weird. I explained a flat white was espresso with steamed milk. He said, "Right, but can you make it normal?" I asked if he wanted a latte instead. He said no, he wanted a flat white, just American style. I made him a regular flat white. He took one sip, nodded approvingly, and said, "See? Way better when it's not trying so hard to be foreign. Australians don't sugarcoat. We're direct, sarcastic, and allergic to fake enthusiasm. Americans expect customer service smiles and the customer is always right worship. When they hit our brutal honesty wall, confusion turns to comedy." Section 1. Service isn't servitude. I bartended at a pub in Melbourne. An American ordered a beer, and I poured it. He watched me place it on the counter without a coaster or napkin, then asked, "Is there service here?" I said, "Mate, I just served you." He clarified, "No, will someone bring this to my table?" I told him he ordered at the bar, so he takes it to his table. He looked offended and said, "So I'm doing your job?" I replied, "No, you're drinking a beer." He demanded to know why we didn't have table service. I explained this was a pub, not a restaurant. He said, "In America, bars have servers." I said, "In Australia, legs work fine." He complained to the manager, who told him the same thing. He left a review saying we refused to provide basic service. A tourist from Texas walked into our hardware store in Brisbane and asked where our greeters were. I told him we didn't have greeters. He seemed shocked and asked, "Then how do people know they're welcome?" I gestured around the open store and said, "The unlocked door." He wasn't satisfied. He insisted American stores had greeters to create a friendly atmosphere. I told him we preferred people just shop without someone hovering. He said that was cold and asked if Australians didn't value customer experience. I said we valued efficiency. He wandered around for 20 minutes, didn't buy anything, then told me on his way out that our store lacked warmth. I said, "It's hardware, not a hug." I manage a bookshop in Adelaide. A woman from California asked if we had a loyalty program. I said no. She asked why not, since every store in America had one. I explained we were a small independent shop. She said small shops needed loyalty programs more than big ones. I told her we thanked customers by selling good books at fair prices. She said that wasn't enough in today's market. She launched into a lecture about customer retention strategies, data analytics, and personalized marketing. I let her finish, then said, "Or people just buy books they like." She called me resistant to innovation. I sold her a book anyway. She asked for a discount since she'd given me free consulting. I said no. She left but returned an hour later to tell me she'd looked up loyalty programs online and we were leaving money on the table. I thanked her and went back to shelving books. I work at a chemist in Canberra. An American bloke walked up to the counter and asked for drugs. I asked which medication he needed. He said, "Just regular drugs. For a headache." I showed him the paracetamol. He picked up a box, looked at the price, and said it was way too expensive. I told him that was the standard price. He insisted American pharmacies sold pain relievers for like $2. I explained our medications met strict safety standards and pharmacists were highly trained. He said, "It's just Tylenol." I corrected him. "It's paracetamol." He said same thing. I said different name, same drug. He asked why we made it complicated. I told him we didn't. That's just what it's called here. He demanded to speak to the pharmacist. Our pharmacist came out, confirmed everything I'd said, and recommended a different brand that was slightly cheaper. The bloke bought it, then asked if we had a pharmacy rewards card. We didn't. He said, "So you just take people's money and don't give anything back?" Our pharmacist said, "We give you medicine. That's the exchange." He muttered something about customer loyalty and left. I wait tables at a seafood restaurant on the Gold Coast. An American family finished their meal, and the dad handed me cash with a smile. I counted it, exact bill amount. He waited, grinning. I thanked him and started to walk away. He called me back and asked if I'd forgotten something. I said no. He pointed at the money and said, "The tip?" I told him the tip was included in the bill if he paid by card, but cash didn't require one. He looked confused and said, "But you brought us food." I agreed. He said, "So where's my change?" I told him there was no change. He'd paid the exact amount. He insisted I was supposed to keep extra as a tip. I explained we pay our staff proper wages, so tipping isn't expected. He said, "But I want to tip you." I told him that was kind but unnecessary. He left money on the table anyway and told his kids, "Always tip, even when they don't know they need it." An American couple ate lunch at our cafe in Perth. When the bill came, the bloke calculated 20% on his phone, added it to the total, and handed me his card. I processed the actual amount. He checked his receipt and said, "You forgot the tip." I explained the FPOS machine didn't have a tip option because we didn't do tip. He said, "But I'm American. I tip." I told him that was nice, but we paid fair wages. He seemed personally hurt and said, "So you're saying you don't want my money?" I clarified I wanted payment for the food, which he'd provided. He said in America, servers depend on tips to survive. I said in Australia, servers depend on wages. He shook his head sadly and told his wife, "They don't understand hospitality here." She agreed and said it explained a lot. They left a handful of coins on the table anyway. I gave them to the charity jar. I work at a pizza place in Sydney. A bloke from Florida ordered takeaway and asked where to leave his tip. I pointed to the tip jar by the register. He pulled out a $50 note and waved it at me, saying, "This is for excellent service." I told him the pizza cost $30. He said he knew. The extra 20 was his tip. I explained that was too much. He said, "In America, we tip big." I told him this wasn't America. He insisted I take it anyway because I'd been so helpful. I'd literally just taken his order. I refused the 50 and asked for 30. He looked hurt and said, "You're really not going to let me tip you?" I said not $20 for handing him a pizza. He folded his arms and said, "Fine, but you're missing out on building customer relationships." He changed and left. He came back the next week, ordered again, and tried to tip me $15. I told him no again. He said I was the most stubborn waiter in Australia. I said I wasn't a waiter, I made pizzas. I work at a surf shop in Byron Bay. A woman from California walked in and asked if we price matched. I said no. She showed me an online listing where the same board was $50 cheaper. I told her to buy it online then. She seemed stunned and said, "You're not even going to try to keep my business?" I explained if she found it cheaper elsewhere, she should buy it there. She said American stores would match the price to win the customer. I told her we weren't competing, we charged what we charged. She called me anti-capitalist. I said I just sold surfboards. She insisted I was losing a sale by not matching. I agreed and suggested again she buy it online. She stood there for a full minute, visibly wrestling with disbelief. Finally, she said, "Do you even want customers?" I replied, "The ones who want to pay our prices, yeah." She huffed and left. She returned 30 minutes later, bought the board at full price and said, "The website charged shipping." I said nothing. She added, "You could have told me that." I said, "You could have checked." Australians don't coddle feelings or pretend enthusiasm we don't have. We're honest, direct, and unapologetic about it. Americans interpret this as rudeness because they're raised on corporate smiles and scripted pleasantries. When they visit Australia expecting exaggerated service culture, they slam into our brick wall of brutal honesty. We're not mean, we're just Australian. If you ask a dumb question, we'll answer it honestly. If you demand special treatment, we'll tell you no. If you want fake politeness, try somewhere else. But here's the thing, Americans always come back. They complain about our lack of hospitality, then return the next day because, deep down, they appreciate not being bullshitted. They might leave reviews calling us cold or rude, but they respect the honesty once the culture shock wears off. And honestly, we prefer customers who can handle the truth over ones who need their egos massaged every 5 minutes.